Hello, and welcome to the webinar, 3 Ways to Overcome Your Supply Chain Fulfillment Challenges. My name is Becky Lawler with Supply Chain Dive's Brand Studio, and I'm excited to facilitate today's discussion on how to overcome your supply chain fulfillment challenges. Now, before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items. Please note that the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. If you want to enlarge the slides, you can click the Enlarge Slides button in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window. And if you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget on the bottom left corner, and someone from our staff will help you. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget at the bottom, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end. After the presentation, you will also be able to access the on-demand recording of the webinar using the same link from today's live event. That's all of the housekeeping, so please help me welcome our speakers for today. We have 3 speakers, Ruchir Patel, Paul Burrell, and Nilam Jahala. And just to give you a little bit of background on each of them, Ruchir Patel is the Globia OEM Offering Manager and a supply chain expert at Fujitsu Americas. He's a passionate technologist focused on transforming CRM and ERP business processes using cloud solutions. His areas of expertise include order and inventory management and integrating multiple systems together to design solutions that directly influence and improve customer experience. Our second speaker, Paul Burrell, has held a number of different roles, including marketing strategy, retail consulting, product strategy, and retail portfolio director for the America region at Fujitsu. In these roles, he has worked with many retailers to help them understand the opportunities for operational improvement through the implementation of new and emerging technologies. Paul has also worked with a number of industry groups, user communities, and retail alliances to help develop strategies for next-generation technology introduction to the retail marketplace. We're also excited to have with us Nilam Jahala. He's the VP of Technology for Hallmark, and in this role, Nilam is responsible for identifying and delivering technology strategies and solutions that advance consumer, retail, and wholesale priorities for Hallmark Global and Hallmark Digital. Nilam plays a key role in managing an effective relationship between IT and global business partners. He oversees technology operations for Hallmark.com, close to 2,000 omnichannel-enabled brick-and-mortar retail stores, and product, field, and fulfillment support for over 50,000 wholesale rooftops. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you all here. I know you all have some great thoughts and perspectives to share with our audience. So let's jump into today's topic. Supply chain organizations have experienced an unprecedented amount of disruption in the last few years, from rapid and enormous shifts in consumer behaviors and expectations around the shopping experience, to seeing disruptions due to natural disasters or crises like the current pandemic. In fact, nearly 75% of companies reported global supply chain management disruptions in one form or the other due to coronavirus-related transportation restrictions. Because of the amount of disruption, businesses are learning that they need agile fulfillment processes that can adapt to these disruptions. It's become a competitive imperative for retailers and manufacturers. As many as 56% of online shoppers and 49% of retail store shoppers say they expect consistent levels of service across physical and digital channels. Yet inflexible supply chain management systems are making it difficult for many retailers and manufacturing organizations. To discuss more about the challenges faced by retailers and manufacturers, I'm going to turn it over to our panel. Paul, let's start with you. What challenges are you seeing for retailers when it comes to agile supply chains and fulfillment?
Thank you. I'd start by saying, beyond the realities of very, very tight budgets in retail and routine business continuity planning exercises, many retailers simply were not ready and not adequately planned for dramatic supply chain disruption or the constraint their suppliers are facing. We tend to think about DR planning for extraordinary events like floods, hurricanes, fires. They can have very, very broad impact to your overall business plans. But typically, we don't think in retail about global events. For example, the one we're facing today with COVID-19. So this year, I'd say the reality is that for such extraordinary events, many retailers had, no backup plan for simultaneously losing their operation, and there also a severe impact to their suppliers. So over the past few months, every retailer has been, going back to their goods and services suppliers, trying to mitigate issues, and in doing so, that's created a lot of tactical challenges for the suppliers. And they're asking questions like, who's willing to pay more, and unfortunately they are, for the products and services we're currently providing under a contract? Who's got the larger contract? Who does more sustained business with us? And it's these unfortunate circumstances that's made it really especially hard for small businesses. They're also competing for those same goods and services that just simply have less leverage, and they're just not positioned to compete for constraints to the products and services they receive. Now, even if retailers have designed and implemented, very, very solid supply chain strategies, in very agile ways, very specific ways, if their supplier contracts don't or can't support them adequately in times of uncertainty, like we're facing today, they have to ask the question, are they really agile or not? And I can give you an example, working with many customers. There's a super regional grocery store chain in the southeastern U.S., but also is a major private label brand provider, supplier, not only to their own stores, but to smaller grocery store independents across the country, in fact. And what unfortunately has happened to them is that the demand was so high for essential goods, as we call them now, in the grocery industry, they could barely keep up with their own store demand. So unfortunately, those smaller operators who they were really fulfilling products to have suffered. In many cases, those brands, especially in the high-velocity SKUs, just aren't available. And there was nothing in a lot of those contracts that protected those small companies from these types of events. And I think that's where supply chain agility and thinking in an agile-like fashion, and you're designing your contracts with your suppliers, if it's not evident now, it definitely will be tomorrow when this is all over.
Thanks, Paul. I think your point about not being truly agile if your contracts aren't agile or don't support kind of an agile position for you is a really good point to bring up, and one many retailers, especially small businesses, may have overlooked until now. Ruchir, on the manufacturing side, what are some of the challenges they're having with agile fulfillment?
Thanks. So manufacturers have multiple touch points or dependencies. First, manufacturers have to rely on a gamut of suppliers to get their raw materials or ingredients just to manufacture their products. Next, they have dependencies when trying to make these goods available to their customers. Now, if the customer's buying behavior changes, then this creates lots of uncertainties and exposure in the entire network. They may have dependencies on transportation providers, even supply chain partners like dealers, distributors, retailers, and sometimes even the customers themselves. So ultimately, what manufacturers are constantly trying to achieve is to keep up with this customer's changing behaviors and experience expectations. And I think that's driving all these different dependencies in their supply chain.
Thanks, Ruchir. It is. There are a multitude of expectations manufacturers have to meet for customers when it comes to fulfillment, as you point out. I'd also like to bring in Nylam to talk about some challenges he's seen, since Hallmark's business spans both retail and manufacturing side of things.
Yeah, guys, I think so. So let me start with a little bit of the background on what the Hallmark, as a business looks like. So, as mentioned in the introduction, Hallmark is a conglomeration of 3 or 4 businesses that operate under the Hallmark umbrella. About 2,000 brick and mortar retail shops, about product fulfillment at a wholesale angle happening in about 50,000 rooftops with Walmart and Walgreens and CVS and all kinds of small and large grocery shops across. We also sell on Amazon. We sell on Amazon as Hallmark, and Amazon also sells Hallmark products, fulfilled by themselves. So all different kind of flavors of supply chain logistics that you can imagine. I think they all play a part in our day to day. So from a business perspective, I think there is no shortage of challenges here. We are also manufacturers of our own products. So most of the products that we sell, we also manufacture. We're a global organization. We have operations in over 100 countries with licensees and in over 150 countries. So we procure product from around the world. We ship product to all over the place. We do omni-channel. We do snail mail. We do electronic products and what have you. So all different kind of combinations. Now, the biggest challenge that we have is that we have had a business that has been around for over 100 years, and our systems, not all of them, but a lot of them have been around for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And we have modernized or in bits and pieces where necessary. We run a full stack omni-channel retail. In order to support that, we have order management, which is close to best in class. But again, it is a piece of our environment that is sort of modernized. And then we have created a bunch of patchwork to make sure we have a perception of being agile. And I think agile is the key word over here. And I think you will hear the theme of being agile or nimble, as we go through today's conversation. Our supply chain, again, has components like I mentioned. It supports e-commerce, seamless fulfillment. Not everything is tied together. And one of the key challenges that we run into is that we need some analytics, and we need analytics on a predictive scale to minimize inventory positions, to manage our investments and our dollars together. And again, having a truly integrated system is a key, and it's something we strive for, and we are actually in progress to ideate around for quite some time to figure out what is the best approach to create a system that is integrated. But every time we feel that we have our hands around the problem, the problem changes. So I think it's an interesting place to be, which is truly evolving, and we are figuring out or trying to figure out our place in this world and how to truly be agile in support of our consumers' aspirations and needs.
Thanks, Nilam. Yeah, so as everybody has noted, there are a lot of challenges both for retailers and manufacturers when it comes to fulfillment and having an agile supply chain. So when we think about how to improve it, one of the things I wanted to ask the speakers about is how important is having visibility in the supply chain to solving these challenges. Ruchir, do you want to start to answer that one?
Sure. This is an interesting area. On the manufacturing side, both quality of the product and the customer experience matters. Now, customer experience consists of three parts. It's their buying experience, their fulfillment experience, as well as the service experience after the sale. So supply chain visibility has to encompass all these parts. Consumers will want to know if the organic materials were used or were the ingredients sourced appropriately, and whether sustainable measures were used to manufacture it. The second aspect is that manufacturers may be at the mercy of their channel partners when it comes to brand experience. The retail store, a dealer, or a distribution partner that the consumer interacts with can greatly influence the experience. So it's important for the manufacturer to not just focus on the product or the quality experience, but also what the customer will ultimately experience when buying the product, and how can manufacturer also maintain a loyalty connection with this customer. If they don't take care of both the product quality and the customer experience, it limits the scope of a manufacturer's growth. They end up losing business to more agile competitors who can provide an end-to-end customer experience. So manufacturers need transparency and visibility to both fulfill customers' expectations and their experience. Now, end-to-end visibility offers several advantages. It gives them greater control to react with situations like product recall. They can inform the customers in a timely fashion, identify the suppliers, and isolate those issues. But it also goes beyond this. The visibility allows or makes it easy for manufacturers to open new revenue channels. For example, with a new direct-to-consumer model in partnership with a distribution partner, they can expand their current customer touchpoints. This will also enable them to offer value-added services on top of their core products. Thirdly, it allows them to collect real-time data across the entire customer journey. Thus, this sort of data collection enables them to cross-sell and upsell capabilities and services across the entire journey.
Yeah, and I'd kind of like to add that, sometimes we forget about the scale of the overall retail supply chain. And, I know we in the retail industry, we think about that every day, but it's truly, truly massive. And I think about it this way, it's massive and it's in flight all the time. It's millions and millions of items on the move every hour, every day. So, even for the best equipped retailers in the industry today, knowing the status of any given individual item for an individual customer, in my mind, is miraculous. Now, Amazon does it extremely well, but even they lose visibility to, an individual item or order along the entire supply chain. And another way to think about it is, for example, I think about a distributor, for example, that may have 15 or 25 major manufacturer product lines that they ship out to, let's just say, 400 customer locations. Now, how does any one of those locations really understand what's happening inside the four walls of that distributor and their operation, in real time and in any given time? And that's because most of the time their contracts, probably they don't say anything about, visibility into their actual, infrastructure and systems. They're really limited to looking at a PO, an order. They'll know when you're going to be getting something by an ASM or a shipping confirmation. So we kind of use the words end-to-end visibility and forget about the fact that, you're really not peering into all the links along the supply chain, whether that's transportation providers, distributors, and the like. So then really, you don't know the overall status, and other factors. Did they ship the order complete? Were any items substituted because they were out of stock at the distributor? Was the order misrouted accidentally, which you usually find out after the fact? Or any of those things, any of these things can happen, and you're always going to have, immediate knowledge or have real-time visibility to those instances. And I'll say that, very, very few retailers today have comprehensive order management systems, by the way, that can provide a high degree of precision on end-to-end real-time visibility. And those are just the realities we face in the industry today.
Thanks, Paul. Nylan, what are your thoughts? Does what Paul and Ruchir say resonate?
Yeah, I think they absolutely do, right? The supply chain visibility into a partner's ecosystem, and implications to consumer loyalty, but both based on product quality and CX, and the opportunity to create new channels are all things that we are faced with solving on a day-to-day basis, and that is something that we don't have. Every time we think that we have end-to-end visibility or we are close to it, things change from our perspective. We sell a lot of our own products, and because the products manufactured by us, so we usually go out there and because we don't have predictive analytics to the point where it is really meaningful, we produce a bunch of products and then throw it into our channels and hope for the best, and that becomes a little bit of a challenge. If we had end-to-end visibility into our transportation ecosystem, our manufacturing ecosystem, and what's selling at stores, that is going to eliminate a lot of guesswork and dollars in terms of products sitting on the shelves that isn't selling. And we can inform our manufacturing and our procurement around the globe to adjust and then have some competitive advantage if we keep up with what the latest definition of end-to-end visibility into the supply chain ecosystem is.
Yeah, in addition to visibility being a key challenge, another piece of the fulfillment supply chain issue is thinking about all the different channels that are out there for customers to use for fulfillment. Research has shown that companies with strong strategies for omnichannel customer engagement see an average of 89% for customer retention versus 33% for companies with weak omnichannel strategies. Yet only 30% of retailers have a well-functioning buy online, pick up in store option, and even fewer have other options available such as buy anywhere, ship anywhere. 21% have that available, or buy online and ship from store. Just 12% have that option available. So the question is, for the speakers today, how can retailers and manufacturers be agile enough to fulfill across not just multiple channels today, but even future channels that might emerge? Nilam, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So it's a pretty good question, and pretty much everybody is trying to solve this particular puzzle. To talk about consumer experience, back in the day, a consumer walked into our store and they judged us based on the last time they walked into our store, and so our experience against our experience. But that is so far in the past now, where now a consumer walks into a coffee shop and has a phenomenal customer service experience, and then 15 minutes later they walk into a Hallmark store and they now are gauging the experience in the Hallmark store with the good experience that they had in the coffee shop, right? Because the consumer experiences or the consumer expectations are judging the retailer or the engagement based on their last best experience, not the last best experience with you. So that creates a bunch of challenges for us. And this is also true in terms of when you look at multiple channels. So the complexity for us is we sell our products ourselves, we sell our products online, direct to consumer. Somebody else sells our product online, be it Amazon, and then consumers interact with our products at CVS and Walmart. So they are still interacting with the Hallmark product, and how do you provide them a consistent experience across the board? I think that's a challenge. Another piece is the Hallmark is pretty diversified. So we have a creative company in our portfolio of companies named Crayola. They make people know them by the Crayola or the crayons, if you will. They do a lot of creative stuff for teachers and parents and kids as well. We also have Hallmark or Crown Media that runs 3 media channels, and all of the products that we manufacture, there is an opportunity for us to introduce those products in all of those channels so we can cross-reference and we can cross-sell. And in order to be able to do that, we need end-to-end visibility into our fulfillment network. Without that, it becomes a cumbersome scenario where somebody buys some stuff online and now they want to go out there and return it to a store, and that just doesn't work as seamlessly unless you have the information available. Also, if you think about the care aspect of it, so if somebody is having a good experience or not such a good experience, or they need some help, they pick up the phone and call 1-800-HALLMARK, and we have to make sure that the agent who's receiving the call has the information handy regardless of the interaction touch point, be it Amazon, be it Walmart, be it a movie channel, or be it our own stores. And without having that access to that information, or a lag in that information, or a 24, 48-hour lag in that information, is not an acceptable scenario, and you are at a tremendous risk of losing the consumer. So when we talk about this integrated supply chain or e-commerce friendly supply chain, call it digital supply chain, all of these things come into play, and we're just trying to figure out what is the most effective way to do it and do it once and then keep it current so that as the consumer expectations are morphing and changing, we are agile and nimble enough to be able to respond to that in a quick fashion across the board.
Yeah, and I would like to add, another thing to keep in mind here is that with fulfillment across multiple channels, even the customer's buying behavior is constantly changing. So now we need to be ready to meet the needs of customers across different channels. And certainly by having these different channels, it allows manufacturers to increase their revenue and cross-sell and upsell capabilities. I would like to share an example of a global premium food manufacturer. Consumers worry or care about the quality and the ethical sourcing of their pet food, just like they care about their own food. And consumers also want a very similar premium experience while purchasing the pet food that they have expectations while purchasing their own food. So in this particular case, a global pet food company recognized the need to focus on bridging the customer experience gap and the product quality gap. They recognize that bridging this gap requires tight relationship with the customer as well as their channel partner, who happens to be vets in this case. So having a good strategy, engagement strategy between different fulfillment channels and channel partners require them to focus not just on the traditional channels, but and this actually helps them get control over the entire customer experience. Also, we have seen that supply chain organizations within a company is actually at the hub, or they sit at a very strategic point, which greatly influences the customer service aspect, the customer experience, as well as the production and supply of the products. So supply chain has the ability now to not just focus on manufacturing the product and making it available, but they can now get greater control and control over the fulfillment based on demands of these specific channels. So they can now be in charge to command where the product goes in which channel in order to ensure that the right level of customer experience is delivered across all appropriate channels. So the manufacturers can be selling to dealers or retailers. They may be selling to B2B customers, or sometimes even directly to their consumers. And all of these channels ultimately go through a common supply chain process. So manufacturers have the responsibility and the need to have a very flexible and agile supply chain capabilities that can do justice for each of these channels that they are serving.
Great, thank you, Chair and Nilam. So we've touched on the need for visibility and transparency in the supply chain, as well as the ability to fulfill across channels. But another critical piece in fulfillment is inventory management. And according to a January 2019 Forrester Consulting report, 79% of online adults say it's important for a retailer to offer visibility into items that are available in their physical store, and 34% say they are less likely to even visit a store if its inventory is not available online. Paul, from a retailer's perspective, why is inventory management so important to the fulfillment experience?
Well, it's basic block and tackle retailing, right? Again, if you don't have it, you can't sell it. And if you get inventory management wrong, a whole lot of other things get out of shape in a hurry in running your business. So, from the perspective of an agile supply chain, right, and agile fulfillment methodologies, your on-hand inventory has got to be right. And on-hand, of course, is depending on those mechanisms in your business. If your inventory management is off, then you have two choices when it comes to fulfillment. You can tell the customer you don't have the item, and the customer, you can tell the customer you're going to give them a discount maybe on the next best product, for example, substitution. And that's usually one grade up in quality, right, of the product. And by the way, when you do that, you're giving away a lower priced product, a higher priced product at a lower margin. So you're losing margin on that. And if you don't have it and you can't do that, if you can't substitute an item, then basically what you're doing is you're handing your customer to your competitor. They're going to go somewhere else. And so that's why inventory management, inventory accuracy is really so critical, right? And if you ask the question, so what does the inventory accuracy play in the overall fulfillment, I'd say it's the game. If you get that wrong, everything else goes wrong. And in my view, it's probably the number 2 most important in retail of all things we have to focus on, second only to customer service.
How about for manufacturers, Ruchir? What's important for them when it comes to inventory management?
I think the inventory management for manufacturers traditionally had been limited to managing inventory within the factory or the plant, the warehouse or the distribution center. And accurate inventory management drives accurate inventory visibility, which means lack of inventory visibility is not just limited to inventory cost. It actually goes beyond just reducing the inventory cost. The inventory needs to be leveraged to orchestrate customer expectations and the customer experience. For example, the supply chain needs to have a very agile and powerful order allocation engine that allows manufacturers to leverage inventory information in real time and make intelligent decisions that can affect fulfillment. So if you have multiple channels, which kind of inventory should be used to fulfill the demand of which channel? That's an important question that requires to be addressed. So these sorts of decisions have to be made in real time. So inventory management goes beyond simply reducing the cost of holding inventory or finished goods. Let's consider a scenario. If a manufacturer is going to launch a new direct-to-consumer channel, they may start offering subscription-based orders for consumers. Subscription means that they have to be fulfilled within a certain window, like deliver a product on the 5th of each month. To do that, you have to have certain things in place so that inventory is going to be available at that location, so the manufacturer can honor the subscription. Now, if you are not careful with inventory allocation, they may end up spending more money if the inventory isn't at the right place at the right time. And in order to fulfill the SLA of that subscription order, they may end up choosing a more expensive shipping cost model. As for subscription orders, honoring the SLA is extremely important. So many times we have seen that these traditional systems may not be agile enough to let manufacturers look at advanced orders or subscription orders. There's an example of where an intelligent allocation engine comes into play.
Would you like to weigh in here as well, Nylam? You have a unique perspective of being a retailer and a manufacturer.
Yeah, all the points that Richard was hitting on, right? Inventory visibility is paramount, and what Paul was talking about, I think inventory visibility is really important, but having visibility into accurate inventory is paramount also, because you can have inventory on hand and you know where it is, but if we don't have the accurate inventory available, then I think it could lead to a suboptimal consumer experience if they walk into a location, or it could lead to a suboptimal cost structure. So an example would be if a consumer walks in there and asks for a certain product, and if I have to, in the omni-channel context, I'm doing a ship from store model applicability on that particular order, and if I can't fulfill from one location, because I don't have correct inventory available in my systems, or it's not high fidelity that I can trust it, then I have to go out the split shipment route. And every time I split a shipment, I have to add shipping costs, and there goes your margin, which are razor thin to begin with. So having a perspective into that is important. From our perspective, the manufacturing component, if we had predictability into what is selling, that would help us in terms of modernizing our manufacturing process to do some stuff on demand versus having to go out there and print thousands of or create thousands of ornaments that have a 8-month lead time coming from Sri Lanka or Hong Kong or Vietnam. Versus we can have some 3D printers available that we try every once in a while or doing at some scale where we can print them on demand and cut that lead time by a tremendous amount. It's also from a perspective of us being a retailer and a wholesaler, we lose a bunch of opportunities. So an example is with a big grocery chain we have, the way it works is we do scan-based trading with them. So we take a bunch of product and we have linear footage available in their stores, and we put that product based on seasons and then based on some everyday cards. They don't have visibility into our inventory because it is scan-based, so they pay us at the sale. So the way for us to know what inventory is available into a retail in the wholesale context at a retailer is when one of our field agents go out there and do an inventory, a physical inventory count, and that's how we know. And even if we are doing it once every day, it is 24 hours old. So the opportunity loss that happens is the metric of at this particular retailer, when people are walking into the store and buying products, their basket size is $45. But when they are ordering stuff online, that basket size is $145. And a $2.99 card, pitched the right way, has a greater degree of probability to be picked up in the $145 order versus a $45 order, especially in the COVID scenario when things have become low touch, if you will. And we don't have availability of that inventory, and we definitely don't have visibility into the inventory at that particular retailer connected with their system. So we are missing out on this whole channel that is rocking and rolling right now. So it's such a big handicap, or has become a bigger handicap with COVID that inventory visibility and understanding of accurate inventory is just table stakes now.
Thanks, Nilam. Yeah, lots of challenges around supply chain agility and fulfillment that we've talked about for both retailers and manufacturers. And we've looked at why things like inventory management, fulfillment across channels, and invisibility are all important. But I think the big question is, how can retailers and manufacturers actually improve these things in their supply chain? Paul, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, and let's talk about the technology piece because it's so critical. And so from that technology viewpoint, the reason a lot of retailers can adapt quickly, to new channels, disruptions in those channels, a lot of that flows back to the legacy systems that they have. And those systems, I hate to say it, for so many retailers, they're still prolific across the industry. So step one, you got to get off those old technologies, those old platform systems, or you have to put other systems on top of them that have the ability to provide you real-time information and thus provide you, the agility you need to run your business. Now, a lot of the database systems out there, kind of on that same thread, that still exist today, they're not capable of doing real-time communications, which is absolutely essential. Some of those are still batch systems, or they provide, intraday updates. So you can't do real-time analytics when you have to deal with those. In addition, you have to have high performance in memory computing technology to even do that. So they were never designed for that. And so, really at the end of the day, they can't provide you real-time updates on that old technology. So what does that mean? Retailers, they're going to have to jump and do it now onto the new technology stacks that are available today, and you better do it sooner than later. So that's part of the answer. I would say the other part of the answer, and is still inhibited sometimes by legacy technology, especially in retail, is AI. And we talk about that, very blindly. Right now, retail, is still sticking its toe, so to speak, in the AI pool to a certain degree. And yet there's some big companies that are way ahead of the pack, but I would say, a lot of those companies are still on their journey towards what I'll call industrial supply chain AI. But if you've got to have the ability to exploit these types of technologies to be competitive today. Being AI, being real-time communications, real-time updates to fulfill across all the multiple channels. That really is what should be defining, truly what's agile in supply chain and retail operations today.
And Ruchir, what are your thoughts?
I think technology-wise, there needs to be a digital system in place as a hub that connects all the systems and applications. A tool that essentially empowers customer service and supply chain team to rapidly react to situations and make adjustments to different supply chain rules that cater to each channel. So I think the answer is an intelligent order management system, one that allows supply chain teams to act as the hub across the entire organization. So these order management systems can connect to customer CRM systems. It can connect to ERP systems as well as the e-commerce portal, and even provide a digital channel partner experience center. This hub then allows supply chain to deliver or react to all of these changing dynamics that are occurring in the market.
Nylam, do you have any thoughts as well to contribute here on how to solve these challenges?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Paul and Richard said. Right, I think a lot of folks are. It's all about real time, accurate, agile, intelligent OMS, CRM, ERPs. From my perspective, providing visibility to what's on hand, what's on the assembly line, what's in the store, what's coming down the pipe, in a near real time fashion, if not real time. That could be a potential game changer for most traditional retailers. Paul talked about the AI components, right? A lot of people are dabbling into it, and some are farther on the journey than others. But I think there are a handful, if there are a handful of retailers, especially that can do it at scale and that can do it at scale profitably. That's the challenge that is out there, because legacy has to be phased out. The new stuff has to be put in. These are complicated landscape, complicated systems that could cause some challenge. And there are some fundamental technology changes that have to happen when it comes to data interchanges as well. If you think about the last miles, talking about fulfilling the same day deliveries, and what you need to do in terms of manufacturing. That manufacturing needs to happen at a wholesale level, at least for us. To create both so we fold paper, right? So do we need to actually have 1 million cards available somewhere, or I can create it on demand and still be able to have a local store that could have a 3D printer or 10 that could serve as a local distribution center and start shipping those things out on a profitable scenario. I save money on my inventory and my discards altogether. But again, at the end of the day, the data visibility is across platform, across vendors, across different domains. It is paramount, and somehow we need to figure out a way to operationalize that at scale with profitability, and without having a 5-year lead time into putting a system into place. Because by the time we put one into place and people learn about it and it becomes functional, I think we are 5 years too late again. So, everything that Paul and Richard said, that's the problem we are trying to solve.
Great, thank you. Outside of the technology, what do you have to get in place organizationally to ensure the technology gets used to its fullest potential?
Paul, do you want to take that one? Talk? Yeah, I'll take it. And this is a great question. I've always been a gigantic advocate of blending teams within the retail operation, right? And I don't think you should have an IT department that sits on one part of the building or campus, operations sits on another part, and the only time you ever meet is when there's a meeting called somewhere in between. I think you should always have blended teams, and that they shouldn't be experimental in nature, so to speak, meaning that you're trying it out. This really needs to be core of how you organize your business operation, and maybe not just at corporate, but all the way out to the stores, the supply warehouses, and the DCs. And the good thing is that when you do that, you kind of get a lot of organic sharing and learning that kind of happens naturally when you have those teams together. I think the retail staff in general, that they may not need to be in the business of helping customers and stocking shelves as much as we were in the past. Retail tomorrow may be more about 40 to 50% of their time spent taking orders in stores to fulfill orders and support their e-com business. We'll see how that shakes out this year. But back to the topic, you have to have a very broad view of how your business operates. So if you have a rotational responsibility, so to speak, and a good part about that is that you get to learn a whole lot about the whole operation of the business, the supply chain. In my world, from the receiving door, to the front end of the store. You get all that by working teams in that type of a construct. I also think that it helps people with their job skills and their career path, right? I mean, at the top leadership levels, you do want people that have a very broad set of experiences across the entire organization and the industry in general. And personally, I can tell you from experience, I went from construction to store planning, into store operations, loss prevention, eventually into IT, and all those rotations for me personally gave me the ability to do things that would have been very unusual from where I started, including opening state-of-the-art, fully automated distribution centers in my career. So all in all, I think that's an excellent strategy to help retailers pick up a lot of momentum organically and naturally that doesn't really cost you a lot of money to do today. So I think that's a great topic to cover further.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. I think the answer is not just technology. There are other things that are necessary to be successful. We have seen organizations who are successful with making their supply chain agile. They usually start with mapping out a detailed customer journey and eventually empathizing with their customer's experience, right? When we put a customer's journey or a customer experience as the first step, then it allows us to take care of rest of the processes from there on. But so far, we have seen many times the supply chain organizations are at least 1 or 2 degrees of separation or are separated from their customer CRM processes. So I think these separation points have to be removed. The supply chain teams have to know each of their customer channels and what experience needs to be delivered in each of those channels. The tailored experience for those channels are essential. And sometimes this may require a cultural change or even re-engineering of the business processes. So now marketing, sales, and customer service teams need to be working in an integrated fashion with the supply chain teams. So for example, if a marketing team wants to run a channel-specific campaign, then they need to have a very tighter collaboration or integration with the supply chain group and the customer service group. And thirdly, I would say, putting an e-commerce portal like a web portal where a customer places an order, I think that is not enough. Manufacturers would certainly need to focus on customer experience that they wish to deliver, and putting in a simple e-commerce portal is not going to cut it. And I think that's where an intelligent orders management system will also play a big role.
Thanks, Paul and Ruchir. As you guys point out, technology is critical, but so are the cultural and organizational systems that need to be in place to facilitate the potential of the technology and ultimately to provide a better fulfillment experience. Nyland, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think what I would like to close at least my portion out is that we are not retailers or wholesalers or manufacturers anymore. Everybody's in the business of consumer/customer experience, and supply chain, logistics, distribution plays a large part in that in that landscape. And any efficiency in any of those portions just manifests itself, especially in this regard, and that impacts consumer experience, that impacts their interaction with our brands and in our day-to-day money making, and I don't think it's a choice anymore to not be agile or nimble, because if we are not, we are gonna have near-term, mid-term, and long-term existential issues as companies and brands. So I would just say, like Richard was mentioning, intelligent order management systems, I think they are an integral part of what needs to be in place with data visibility, so that we don't adversely impact consumer experience. Once that is taken into, or once we have locked that in, then we go out there and figure out a way to use that as a competitive advantage. But having an intelligent supply chain is not a choice anymore.
Thanks, Nilam. I think that's a great point to end on. The impact on the consumer experience is really what Agile fulfillment is all about, and the impact on retailers and manufacturers if they don't get that consumer fulfillment experience right. And on that note, it is time to wrap up our discussion for today. We hope this webinar has given you a better insight on the importance of having a more agile supply chain that can ensure you can meet your customers' fulfillment expectations. Thank you so much, Ruchir Patel, Paul Burrell, and Nilam Jahala for sharing your insights today. It does look like we have a few minutes left for our panel to field some questions. So please feel free to post your questions and we will try to get to all of them. And let me go over there right now and see what we have. The first question we have is, what impact does moving to more agile fulfillment across channels have on the retail workforce? Paul, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. You could answer this a dozen different ways, but I guess my favorite way of answering this question is, forget about what you knew in the past and start over. And that's almost, ground up redesign your processes. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to toss everything, but I think you have to kind of think, from a blank whiteboard perspective. I would say that, one of the hardest things is unlearning the way you used to fulfill orders across channels. So today, you have to holistically look at your inventory, right, all the way from your supplier, your inbound ASNs, from your suppliers to your warehouses, your DFCs, and your stores. I think top class retailers are starting to do that fairly well today. But we can't forget about the workforce, right? The people that are going to be working, doing all that manually, or they'll be doing it, side by side with automation, or be a part of an automated process to fulfill those orders today. So the impact really, to me, means you do have to re-educate and retrain sometimes all of your workforce, and you have to get everybody on board with the reason you're doing it, which is the customer, and keeping those customers happy, satisfied, good quality products. Of course, best price you can do that for them for. And if you get your culture and apply it to how you do the transition from kind of old school legacy fulfillment models to agile fulfillment models, that's the really most important step. And the second is you have to prepare them for change, and you have to say, we're not going to issue an SOP and this is what we're going to do for the next 2 to 3 years. You have to get it ingrained in their minds and in your processes that the world can change tomorrow, just like it did for all of us earlier this year. Right? And they have to understand that, the processes we follow today are likely going to be changing quickly, even, next week, 90 days from now, by the time the season breaks later this year for certain industries. So if you get everybody in that mode of thinking, another really cool thing happens at the end. A lot of great ideas start coming, from across the enterprise, right? They're always looking to do something better, different, faster. And when you have all those things together in combination, that gives you a huge opportunity to differentiate your company from your competitors, simply because you thought carefully through how you're going to make the transition to agile business models and even the fulfillment processes in the company.
Great, thank you. Ruchir, here's a question for you. They ask, you talked about order management systems being the hub of agile fulfillment. What key capabilities do you need to have in one to really meet the requirements today for agile fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, there are many aspects or attributes of a good system, but I personally feel that the very first and the foremost capability that an OMS system needs to have is it needs to deliver an elegant user experience. And this delightful experience for a user who's using the system is not just limited to having few number of clicks or a system doing all the things automatically. That usually is just a basic requirement. But eventually, when things don't go well, when there are situations or issues in a production environment, the system needs to empower the users to take actions, and usually that is done by providing very important and intelligent analytics at the fingertips of the users. I think we spoke about a powerful inventory management and inventory visibility, which is necessary. That's, I think, a key need. And given that a lot of retailers and manufacturers are going to have a gamut of different systems, these OMS systems needs to have a very easy and flexible way to integrate with multiple systems. So that's a key requirement. And finally, I think both William and Paul has touched upon this, that incorporating AI into your workflows in an OMS system is going to be extremely important going forward.
Great, thank you. Nilam, here's a question for you. What is Hallmark doing to modernize their legacy systems?
I think that we are in the middle of two major things. So our warehouse management system, we are revamping that with a industry best ecosystem right now. So at least we have that taken care of. In addition to that, we have our e-commerce business is doing pretty well, or was doing pretty well, and it has been doing really well since the COVID-19 impact has started to shut down brick and mortar. And we are currently evaluating how to transition our existing order management system, which is again sort of intelligent, to a more modern, a more intelligent, and a more integrated order management system integrated with our warehouse management and our manufacturing systems. So I think those are the two key multi-year initiatives that we are executing.
Thanks. Great answer. Another question we had come in was, what role do you see blockchain playing in helping with supply chain visibility? Paul, is this one you can take?
Yeah, sure. And that's a great question. It's one of those technologies it's been kind of hanging out there on the perimeter of the things that we focused on in retail for a couple of years. I think it's made it into the mainstream, I'd say, in the past year and a half or so. Or starting to, at least. So, this is a great topic for us at Fujitsu to cover. We're a founding member of the Linux Foundation, and, we're a very skilled practitioner of Hyperledger technologies, which is what, is the most prolific part of blockchain affecting retail supply chains. So the answer is this. I mean, if you're educated on blockchain, the core design is about how you can make order information as it passes from carrier to carrier immutable. Basically, that it can't be altered. And that's where all the bad things happen in the supply chain, right? They get misrouted. Really ugly things happen, even as far as, organized retail crime mines into your supply chain. So to be able to protect those records as they pass from a manufacturer to a distributor to an intermodal company to a ground logistics carrying company and eventually to you is important, and not allowing those to be tampered with is critical. So blockchain is beginning to be absorbed into those communities within the supply chain, retail supply chain. The challenge is they're not all the same blockchain, right? Even though the technologies may be, fundamentally, Hyperledger at core, they're adapted and customized basically by individual companies. And those records tend to be, very, very, carefully designed around those. So the ability to connect blockchains should be the next question we should be asking. That's something Fujitsu can already do today, and we're introducing that globally, in different parts of the world. But how do you connect independent blockchains together? Because when you do that, now you've got true visibility all the way to the manufacturer, all the way even to the manufacturer's suppliers of raw materials and all the way to the final destination. In fact, you can even use the same technology for a consumer purchase that comes back into the supply chain for the reverse logistics trip to wherever the final disposition of the item is. So I would say that's what's critically important. Maybe one day we'll pick up item-level RFID tagging, which will even make it extremely powerful. But today, I think we're a year out from it being much more broadly available and adopted than it is today.
Great, thank you. We are about out of time. I think we have time for two more questions. The next one is, how do you think manufacturers and retailers and other suppliers along the supply chain can do a better job partnering to improve visibility and transparency across the entire supply chain? Ruchir, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. It is a complicated question as well because it does require providing solutions that are not just limited to one organization, but it spans across organizations and businesses. But I think, first and foremost approach should be to work towards the common customer experience map across companies. So if a manufacturer is working with suppliers and channel partners, I think all of these partners need to come together and ensure that there is a common alignment on what customer experience they all want to deliver. And working towards that common goal ensures that there is collaboration and alignment, as well as I think having integrated systems go a long way in achieving this. Integrated systems not just mean exchanging data through EDI transactions, but exchanging meaningful data and insights across partners in order to work towards a common goal. I think that makes a huge difference as well.
Great, thank you. Last question. And Paul, this one looks like it's for you because you talked about this earlier. How can small businesses or any retailer better protect themselves in their contracts to ensure they still get products when there are constraints on the supply chain?
Yeah, boy, and we talk about that a lot. So as those contracts, come due for renegotiation or re-upping, I think you'll see great advice from a lot of industry consultants that talk about the language and the clauses you put in there. And a lot of the fallout from COVID-19 is going to drive a lot of that. So the answer may be a simple example to make it quick. Might be something like this. If you're a small chain or even an independent operator, a lot of the time, you're completely locked down on your supplier, right? The products you can sell, who you can buy them from. And I won't say even small. There's a gigantic Canadian company that does the same thing. You've got to have something built into that addresses force majeure events, which means that things are completely out of control of the supplier, the retailer, and everybody in between. So in that particular example, under those conditions, you have to be able to go to an alternate supplier for similar products. So you'll see basic things like that. You'll see a lot of changes in performance-based contract language, that's becoming more common today, so that if your business doesn't perform as it should because of wide ranges of conditions, including COVID-19, commitments to buy, MOQs, things like that, are relieved from a contract, right? And so, and then diversity of suppliers. I would say this. You're going to have a broader diversity of suppliers, globally dispersed, maybe even regional backups that are easier to reach out to and have that latitude within your supplier agreements. And then I would say last but not least, not just the OEM manufacturers, but also any resellers or distributors you do business with, you have to address those contracts in the same context as well. You may actually have to change your business operation and model, by the way, to deal with times like we're in right now. So you can't have contracts controlling how you run your business just from a supply chain standpoint. So it's a great topic. We could cover a lot more if we had more time, but great question. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to our entire panel for those valuable insights and your time today to discuss supply chain agility around fulfillment. That is all the time that we have today, so thank you everyone for posing great questions and for coming to the webinar presentation. And a big thanks to our speakers, Ruchir Patel, Paul Burrell, and Nilam Jahala. It was a great discussion. Last reminder, today's webinar will be available on demand and a link will be sent to you after the webinar. Thanks everyone and have a great day.